$128,600 cash, 4 passports, a live encrypted upload mid-raid. Minneapolis just revealed an access pipeline. Who ran it?
Tonight, right now, with Iran tensions spiking overseas and U.S. Homeland Security running at heightened alert levels at home, one American city keeps showing up in the same quiet place you'd never expect. Inside sealed case files, encrypted chat logs, and financial ledgers that don't lie. Minneapolis. Not as a headline, not as a rumor, as a node. And according to the investigators who live in this world, DHS, FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, HSI, ICATF, this isn't a story about foreign conflict staying foreign. This is a story about what happens when global pressure finds local seams and someone decides to pry them open. Because tonight's core revelation is simple and terrifying. This wasn't just about ideology. This wasn't even just about smuggling. This was about access. Access to infrastructure. Access to documents. Access to sensitive systems. And the Minneapolis angle doesn't start with a speech or a flag or a protest. It starts with a knock, a door, and a clock that reads 2:47 a.m. 2:47 a.m. Tuesday. North Minneapolis. January wind cutting between brick apartments like a blade. Streetlights flicker in a thin fog. Snow crusted into gray ridges along the curb. A distant freight horn moans near the river like the city is warning itself. On a side street where people mind their own business to survive, a black SUV idles without headlights. Then another. Then another. No sirens. No dramatic flair. Just men and women in tactical gear stepping into the cold like ghosts, shoulder patches hidden under winter jackets, radios pressed tight to their chests. A voice, low and clipped, rides the earpiece. Stack up. Breach on my mark. AK, 9 unit whines once, just once, then goes silent, as if it understands the rules. The target is a second-floor unit above a laundromat. The kind of building you could pass every day and never remember. But at 2:48 a.m., it becomes a crime scene. Flashbangs crack the night open. Glass shivers. A door frame splinters. Boots thunder up the stairs. Agents flood inside. Hands. Hands. Don't move. A man hits the floor hard enough to knock the air out of the room. And in that first minute, before anyone can even start denying, before anyone can start pleading, investigators see something that makes the hair rise on the back of every neck in that hallway. Not drugs, not guns, not cash. A laptop already powered on. Encrypted messaging open. A live file transfer running. Someone inside this apartment is moving data at 2:48 a.m. like they knew the raid was coming. And that's when the case stops being local. That's when the case stops being routine. Because what investigators find next will trigger an operation name that will never be spoken in public, but will be stamped across warrants, subpoenas, and classified briefings. Operation North Star Shield. If you want to see how deep this goes, hit like right now. By 3:12 a.m., the perimeter is secured. Agents sweep the rooms in methodical arcs. Muzzled discipline tight, flashlights cutting across family photos, cheap furniture, the ordinary camouflage of a life that's supposed to look harmless. A forensic tech kneels by the kitchen counter. Latex gloves squeak as she lifts a phone off a dish towel. The screen is still warm. And there, beneath the polite surface of the apartment, the first layer of evidence emerges. Physical evidence, but not the kind the public expects. A false bottom pantry panel. Inside, for passports, all different names, all with the same eyes. A stack of prepaid debit cards. 2 Glock magazines vacuum sealed. And a roll of industrial-grade wiring, cut lengths, packaged like someone is planning to assemble something fast. In the bedroom closet, behind winter coats, agents find a vacuum bag stuffed with cash. Not a few hundred, not a few thousand. $128,600 in mixed bills, bundled with rubber bands and marked with tiny colored tabs. Tabs that mean something only one kind of person uses. Someone who's moving money like inventory. Agent Daniel Reyes, HSI, 38, former Marine, stares down at it without blinking. Reyes doesn't talk much. People say he's calm. But calm isn't what this is. This is recognition. Because Reyes has seen that tab system before years ago, tied to an overseas financing network that fed violence by the drip and the flood. And standing in a Minneapolis apartment at 3:16 a.m., he realizes the drip is here. And the flood is coming. Act 1 doesn't end with the cash. It ends with the laptop. A digital forensics specialist plugs in a write blocker and clones the drive on site. Fast, controlled, no mistakes. On the screen, the transfer completes. A progress bar, it's 100%. Too late. Something just left this apartment. Something just got away. And a voice on the radio cuts through the tension with the kind of words that change careers. Confirm, remote server handshake succeeded. Then, quieter almost like disbelief. They were uploading to an encrypted node outside the country. At 3:21 a.m., Reyes turns toward the hallway, toward the building exit, toward the cold night where the SUVs wait. His jaw tightens, because he knows what that means. This wasn't a stash house. This wasn't a lone actor. This was an endpoint in a chain. And endpoints don't exist unless there's a source. What investigators found would trigger a national escalation and expose a betrayal that didn't just threaten one city. It threatened the system that's supposed to protect the whole country. Then everything changes. 8:04 a.m., same day. Federal Building Conference Room. Downtown Minneapolis. Fluorescent lights buzz over a table scattered with evidence photos, chain of custody forms, and a single sealed envelope stamped sensitive, no foreign. The air smells like burnt coffee and printer toner. On the wall, a map of the Midwest is pinned with colored tags. Red for seizures, blue for communications, black for suspected facilitators. Minneapolis is marked with 3 black pins. Not 1, 3. And when the analysts start to layer the evidence, the picture sharpens with brutal clarity. This wasn't a case about a single apartment. It's about corridors, routes, cover. The first corridor is physical, goods and people moving through legitimate channels. The second corridor is digital, encrypted communications bouncing through servers like bullets ricocheting. The third corridor is financial, transactions disguised as commerce, charity, remittances, anything that can hide intent. And at 8:17 a.m., the briefing begins. An FBI JTTF supervisor, special agent in charge Megan Sue, 46, eyes like she hasn't slept in a week, points to the first printout. Targets used end-to-end, encrypted messaging, multiple identities, device rotation, burner phones, SIM swaps. She taps the second page. Funds move through Shell LLCs, Minnesota registered, Delaware registered, offshore disbursements. She taps the third. A DHS system access attempt occurred twice in the last 30 days from an IP associated with one of our Minneapolis targets. A silence falls that isn't silence at all. It's the sound of everyone in that room realizing the same thing at the same time. This wasn't lesser crime. This was systemic threat. Because if someone is probing DHS systems from Minneapolis, while Iran tensions are inflaming every intelligence channel, then the question isn't what are they doing? The question is, what are they trying to see? And the answer might be everything. By 9:33 a.m., subpoenas are drafted. By 10:10 a.m., the case expands beyond Minnesota. Because investigators aren't finished. They dig into the laptop image from the raid. They locate the encrypted container. They brute force nothing because brute force is for movies. In real life, they use mistakes. One careless password reused. One metadata leak. One file name that shouldn't exist. At 11:22 a.m., the container opens. Inside, spreadsheets, contact lists, shipping manifests, and one folder labeled simply MPLS Access. The room changes temperature when that folder appears. Not because it's cold, because it's a doorway. Inside the folder, there are scanned IDs. DHS credentials, some expired, some active. CBP badge mockups. ICE letterhead templates. A set of photographs of a secure facility entrance taken from multiple angles, including close-ups of keypad panels. Someone has been studying the homeland like a blueprint. And then the second layer hits. Digital evidence becomes operational. There's a chat log, encrypted but now readable. The messages don't sound like amateurs. They sound like people who understand procedures. Shift change window confirmed. Facility guard rotation noted. Badge printer acquired. Need updated roster. And then one line that turns the stomach. Minneapolis contact says the gate protocol can be bypassed. He wants payment. If you're still watching, it's because you can feel what that means. Comment one word, ready, if you're prepared to see who sold us out. By 1:06 p.m., financial analysts trace the money. The $128,600 isn't random. It's a tranche, part of a larger stream that moves in pulses. $25,000 here, $40,000 there, $12,500 through a consulting invoice. A Minnesota shell company called North River Outreach registered to a rented mailbox. A Delaware entity called Cedar Meridian Imports. An offshore account tied to a Caribbean bank known for answering questions with silence. Within 48 hours, agents identify $3.2 million in suspicious transfers tied to the network. Not over years, over 5 months. This isn't someone saving. This is someone paying. Paying for access. Paying for documents. Paying for silence. Power doesn't always need violence. Sometimes it only needs money, paperwork, and a compromised signature. Then the third layer hits. Human evidence. An informant. Not a villain. Not a hero. A man with a record, a family, and fear that doesn't let him sleep. His handler brings him into a secured interview room at 6:18 p.m. His hands shake as he sips water. His name in the file is CI-27, but his real name doesn't matter as much as what he says. They talk about Tehran like it's a boss, he whispers. Like there's a clock running. They say if the U.S. squeezes them over there, they'll make it hurt over here. Agent Reyes listens without blinking. The informant continues. They use Minneapolis because it's quiet. Because it's not New York. Not D.C. People don't expect it. They say the farther from the coast, the safer the pipeline. Pipeline to what? Reyes asks. The informant swallows hard. To papers. To badges. To doors. And then, like he's ripping out his own teeth, he says the name. A name investigators didn't want to hear. Not because they hadn't suspected. Because suspecting is different than knowing. The Minneapolis contact, he's inside. Inside what? The informant leans forward, voice breaking. Inside Homeland Security. Type Fury if you want to see who betrayed the badge. By 9:41 p.m., the case crosses the line into systemic evidence. Because an insider doesn't exist alone. An insider is either a lone fracture or the first crack in a wall that's already weakening. Investigators pull internal access logs. They compare badge scans with shift schedules. They isolate anomalies, a credential used at unusual times, a login from an unusual workstation, a file accessed without a clear operational reason. At 11:58 p.m., an analyst highlights a pattern. A DHS contractor, mid-level, trusted, invisible, has accessed facility rosters repeatedly. The name, Omar Nazari. 42. Married. 2 kids. No criminal record. Works in logistics coordination, a position that never looks glamorous but touches everything. Nazari has been in meetings, on email chains, in the quiet arteries of bureaucracy. The kind of job that can move a box across the country without anyone asking why. And now he's touching rosters. Not once, 37 times in 6 weeks. But the deeper investigators dig, the uglier it gets. Because Nazari isn't acting alone. His credential is used from a terminal that belongs to someone else. A supervisor, a woman with tenure, a woman with authority to approve and delete. And when they pull her records, they find unexplained deposits, $9, $800, $7,500, $6,200, always under reporting thresholds. Always timed around sensitive access spikes. Her name, Deputy Director Elaine Mercer, DHS Field Office Administrative Authority in the region. A face that appears in photos with politicians. A person who signs commendations. This isn't lesser crime. This is institutional compromise. And it still isn't the top. Because the chat logs, those same logs open from a Minneapolis laptop, contain a phrase that keeps repeating. Green light from the director. Not deputy. Director. By the next morning, 7:12 a.m., a joint command post is established. FBI JTTF. She. ATF. ICE. Local SWAT. Federal prosecutors. They don't call it a meeting. They call it a brief. Because words matter when you're about to collapse a network that might already be inside your own walls. The operation plan is printed, initialed, burn-bagged after review. Objectives are clear. Secure Nazari. Flip Nazari if possible. Contain Mercer. Identify the director. Prevent evidence destruction. Prevent flight. Prevent, above all, an event. Because the deeper the network goes, the more investigators fear the real endgame isn't theft. It's sabotage. At 10:03 a.m., Agent Sue turns to the room. This is not just corruption, she says. This is a redesign attempt. They're trying to rewire how access works. Then she adds the line that lands like a weight in the chest. And if they succeed, we won't know what's coming until it's already inside. Act 2 escalates with a discovery cascade. Because investigators aren't done. They follow the money further. A forensic accountant flags a recurring vendor, North Star Secure Solutions. Sounds legitimate, but it's a shell. And it ties to procurement orders for printers, laminates, security paper, badge-making materials. And it ties to a warehouse lease on the edge of the metro. Brooklyn Park, Minneapolis angle. Again, but the worst is yet to come. 4:26 p.m., Brooklyn Park Industrial Corridor. The sky is the color of dirty steel. Snow flurries drift sideways, tapping against parked semis. A surveillance team sits in an unmarked van, breath fogging the windows. Inside, Reyes watches the warehouse entrance through binoculars. A man exits. Hood up. Looks like nobody. He carries a tote bag, but his posture is wrong. Too rigid. Too aware. He pauses at the curb like he's listening to the air. Reyes' radio crackles. Subject matches. Confirmed. A second voice. Go time in 3 minutes. Then the door to the warehouse opens again. Another man steps out, and for a split second, Reyes sees the tell. A small bulge under the jacket near the waistband. Not a phone. A weapon. Abort, someone asks. Reyes doesn't hesitate. Negative. We breach. 5 p.m. on the dot. SWAT stacks at the side door. Breach, breach, breach. The ram hits. The door caves. Agents surge in. Inside, the warehouse isn't full of drugs. It's full of identity. Printers. Laminators. Stacks of blank credential cards. Security hologram overlays. And on a table, laid out like a menu, are partially completed DHS badges. Names printed. Photos ready. Access levels coded. This is an assembly line for infiltration. Flashlights swing across another table. There, sealed in evidence bags within minutes, are 6 pistols, 2 AR pattern rifles, and a crate of ammunition. Physical evidence, finally, in the form the public recognizes. But it's not the guns that matter most. It's the binder. A thick binder labeled Phase 2. Inside, facility maps, shift rotations, transit schedules, a handwritten note clipped to the front. After access, disruption. Disruption. Not robbery. Not fraud. Disruption. And when they flip to the next page, there's a date circled in red ink. A countdown. 3 weeks away. By 6:14 p.m., Mercer's office computer is seized under warrant. Digital forensics pulls a hidden partition. Inside, a contact named D. The emails are short, cold, professional. Need roster update. Approved. Payment confirmed. Then the line that turns corruption into something worse. Event must align with overseas pressure. Timing matters. This is coordination. This is someone thinking in geopolitical rhythms. Iran tensions abroad, leverage for homeland disruption at home. Minneapolis is not the stage. Minneapolis is the supply room. And now Act 3 begins. Because once investigators have this much, they can't wait. They can't negotiate with a clock. They can't assume the network will sit still. At 3:30 a.m. Friday, 2 days after the initial raid, Operation North Star Shield goes kinetic. The coordination is military precision. Simultaneous warrants across 3 states. Multiple teams. Multiple agencies. A central command channel. A secondary backup channel. Encrypted comms for the team, because they now know the enemy lives in Systems 2. 3:32 a.m., North Minneapolis, Nazari's house. 3:33 a.m., suburban office park, Mercer's residence. 3:35 a.m., St. Paul storage unit registered under a false name. 3:36 a.m., Chicago area safe house tied to the offshore transfers. 3:37 a.m., a rural cabin, suspected meeting location, near the Wisconsin border. Every minute is scripted. Every minute is dangerous. 3:32 a.m., Nazari opens his front door before the ram hits. He's in sweatpants, hands trembling, eyes wide. He doesn't fight. He collapses. As agents cuff him, Reyes leans close. "Who is the director?" he asks. Nazari's lips move like he's trying to speak through cement. Then he whispers, "You don't understand. It's not one director." Reyes' blood goes cold. Nazari continues, voice cracking. "It's a program. It's been acceded. Mercer's not the top. Mercer's just the signer." Then Nazari looks straight at Reyes and says the line that will haunt the case file forever. "They don't just buy people. They build ladders. 3:33 a.m. Mercer's door is breached. She screams. Her husband shouts. Agents secure the room. Mercer tries to talk. She tries to explain. She tries to turn it into misunderstanding. But in her bedroom closet, behind designer coats, they find a safe. Inside, $74,000 in cash, jewelry, and a second phone. On the phone, messages to D. And one voice note, minimal devastating. Phase 2 approved. 3:35 a.m. The St. Paul storage unit opens to reveal more than materials. It reveals human impact. A suitcase stuffed with counterfeit documents, social security cards, green cards, driver's licenses. Dozens. A factory of identity theft. But on the floor, tucked under a shelf, is something else. A child's backpack. Pink. Cartoon characters on the front. Inside, school papers. A family photo. A reminder that the network's money isn't abstract. It passes through lives. It contaminates everything it touches. By 4:40 a.m., arrests total 13. Seizures include more than $420,000 in cash, 23 fraudulent credentials, 9 firearms, for vehicles with hidden compartments, 2 encrypted servers, and 1 ledger that ties the whole thing together. The ledger isn't poetic. It's transactional. Names, dates, amounts, and at the top, the signature mark of D appears again and again. But D isn't just a letter. It's an initial, a last name. And when investigators finally match it to an authority figure inside the bureaucracy, the betrayal escalates to its final form. Director Thomas Dorr, a senior regional Homeland Security official with decades of service. The kind of man who gives speeches about vigilance. The kind of man who stands behind podiums and promises safety. According to the evidence, Dorr didn't just take money. He didn't just look the other way. He facilitated a system for infiltration. He didn't just betray a badge. He weaponized the institution. Power doesn't always need violence. Sometimes it only needs a signature and a gate that opens when it shouldn't. Then the courtroom. 6 months later. 9:10 a.m. Federal Court. Minneapolis. The air inside is dry, heavy recycled. Mercer sits at the defense table, face pale, eyes fixed on nothing. Nazari sits beside his attorney, smaller than he looked in surveillance photos. Director Dorr enters last, escorted, no longer protected by protocol. His suit hangs wrong on him now. Not because it's cheap, because dignity doesn't fit anymore. The prosecution speaks in measured tones. They lay out the evidence like bricks. Physical evidence, weapons, cash, counterfeit materials. Digital evidence, encrypted chats, server logs, access records. Financial evidence, shell companies, structured deposits, offshore transfers. Human evidence, informant testimony, cooperating witnesses, internal investigators. Systemic evidence, a ladder built inside the very agency tasked with preventing ladders. A victim's mother is called to testify. Her son overdosed on fentanyl that investigators trace back through the same laundering pipeline, money and logistics intertwined. Her hands shake as she grips the microphone. "My son wasn't a statistic," she says, voice cracking. "He was a person. And you," she looks at Mercer, then at Dorr, "you turned the people who were supposed to stop this into the people who made it easier." No shouting, no theatrics, just a sentence that lands like a verdict in the bones. An honest officer, a local task force member named Officer Lena Markham, testifies next. She describes how her team's cases kept collapsing, how warrants were tipped off, how suspects vanished minutes before raids. "I thought we were getting outsmarted," she says. "I didn't realize we were getting sold." In the end, sentences fall. Mercer, 14 years. Nazari, 8 years with cooperation credit. Dorr, 26 years federal, plus asset forfeiture. When the judge reads the final line, Dorr stares forward like he's listening to someone else's fate. But it's his. It's all of theirs. And now, the story closes where it began. Not in a courtroom, in a question. Because this story is a fictional dramatization, but the warning is real. When global tensions rise, local vulnerabilities become targets, and corruption doesn't always arrive wearing the face you expect. Sometimes it arrives with credentials. Sometimes it arrives with a smiling official. Sometimes it arrives with a gate that opens on command. Hit subscribe so you see what happens next. Share this so people understand how deep betrayal can go. Comment vigilance below. Tap like so more people see this story. Because the question isn't whether someone will try again. The question is, will we catch them before it's too late?